Not again, not again, not again.
Hello and welcome to the Exploding Appendix podcast. I'm Bradley Tuck, and in this session we'll be joined by Oli Spleen, known for Pink Narcissus, Spleen, and solo work such as Gaslight, Illuminations, and Nick Hudson, known for the Academy of Sun, to discuss their recent collaboration, Night Sweats and Fever Dreams 2020, an album that deals with Oli's diagnosis with HIV in 1999 and hospitalisation with AIDS-defining complications in the summer of 2000. Returning to these experiences 20 years later, Oli Spleen has collaborated with Nick Hudson to produce a fevered, hallucinogenic mirror to the desperate times when the threat of death at the hands of AIDS was a terrifying reality for many gay men. In this session we will discuss the album, the themes and experiences raised in it, and its relation to both Oli Spleen and Nick Hudson's other projects, as well as playing excerpts from the album. The session was run as part of the Exploding Appendix Avant-garde art practice and research group that meets every fortnight to discuss a range of ideas loosely related to themes of avant-garde art and radical counterculture. This session was recorded on the 19th of May 2020. Special thanks to Neil Philip Whitehead for his support in editing the podcast, and we hope you enjoy. I thought possibly it'd be good to start maybe with a song.
Yeah.
And I thought possibly we'd start with Funeral Dirge, even though it's not actually on the album. It's a good one.
Well, we wanted to put that as the bonus track for the CD.
Both of us feel like it should be on the album, so it's a good choice. And it's funny. So.
It is funny. I really enjoyed it.
The recording session was amazing, but we can talk
that
about
would have been the music video if we'd have got it done. But...
What do you think it's like to die?
When my time to go is here, call my friends to gather near. Tell the doctor and the preacher that I'm failing, but don't wallow in your grief when they put me down beneath. Just sing to me this melody I'm wailing. It goes pick me up and lay me down and spread the news all over town. Tell them all to come or they'll be sorry. Pick me up and shake me twice. I'm passing on to paradise. This poor boy is going to live in glory. When it's time to say goodbye, all my friends will wail and cry as they watch the coffin rock around and squirming. Then they'll raise a mighty shout when my bones come marching out, and I praise myself and preach the final sermon. It goes pick me up and lay me down and spread the news all over town. Tell them all to come or they'll be sorry. Pick me up and shake me twice. I'm passing on to paradise. This poor boy is going to live in glory. When the earth begins to quake from the shaking at my weight, I'll be here and making music like I'm living. And the sorrow and the grief will give the angels sweet relief. Then you'll know that all my sins have been forgiven. Sing, pick me up and lay me down and spread the news all over town. Tell them all to come or they'll be sorry. Whoa, pick me up and shake me twice. I'm passing on to paradise. This poor boy is going to live in glory. Oh, pick me up and lay me down and spread the news all over town. Tell them all to come or they'll be sorry. Pick me up and shake me twice. I'm passing on to paradise. This poor boy is going to live in glory.
Oh, Rocco.
Rocco at the end, yeah.
Excellent
That was
song.
fun. That was a really fun session.
That was really, really fun and exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
No, it's a
Paul-
really great one. I thought it just gets... It's just such a... Well, it's from Fraggle Rock, right?
Yes, but I
But
changed
we're not telling the PRS that.
my friend Susan sent me the link because I had the Fraggle record, but I there were songs such as that didn't make it onto the records, and she sent me the link, and I was like, shit, I really want to do this, but the original was called Dixie Wailin', and it I just wanted to tweak, in the tradition of folk songwriting, I wanted to just reimagine it slightly.
Mm.
But it's got the essence of it. It was a Uber Fraggle penned funeral dirge, which is how he describes it. But it was called Dixie Whalen, if you want to see the original, which is on YouTube.
Yeah, I did. I watched the original.
But it also had that klezmer feel, and I realized that was where my love of klezmer came from. And it was around the time that people, the elections, and there was Klez for Jazz, and I messaged this guy, and I was like going, because he was posting his klezmer video, and I said, I've been looking for a clarinetist. I really want to work with a klezmer clarinetist. I'm in Brighton, and I haven't met any klezmer clarinetists. And he said, well, my teacher Merlin lives in Brighton. And I was like, well, could you give me that name? And I took the name and messaged him, and he came in and did an amazing.
And he was one of 700 Merlins in Brighton.
Yeah. And he's a friend of Abby's, isn't he?
Yeah.
I was about to ask if you've asked Abby about klezmer musicians.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, I should.
Merlin is Paulina's.
If you haven't, you should.
Yeah.
No, we've discussed it loads, and Edie. I played that the first day I met Edie. She was like, "Are you Jewish?" I was like, "I do my best," and I played her that song, and she was like, "Yeah, you're definitely Jewish." So
it was such a fun session.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Wasn't that the first take as well? I think it was, wasn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. I think I might have redone my vocal because it was.
We recorded the piano and vocal simultaneously because obviously it's rubato, so it's
That's what we
up,
did
so.
with most of these recordings for the Flowers for and Night Sweat. But sometimes, sometimes it was good to just go in a second time. And Forbes did the drums afterwards, which is fairly impressive.
The video of it somewhere on YouTube of Forbes doing the drums, and obviously it speeds up, and by the end it just gets so frenetic, he looks insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And Merlin came in afterwards. So and these are great musicians, so everyone's really just keeps with the flow,
And there was Lizzie on violin, myself, and you doing all of the sort of stamping on the floor, sort of Tom Waitesian.
Oh yeah.
And then some bellowing backing vocals. It was one of the most fun recording sessions, wasn't it, that one?
It was great. And it's my tribute to the Fraggle, so I hope, that was the one that we were going to do the music video for. And Fraggle Rock was obsessed with death, and it was my childhood substitute for friends, religion, life. So I wanted to give something back to the Fraggle cause. But I'm glad. You and I, Nick, we have so many interests in common that it's very easy to take something like that.
Well, it was it's one of our shared formative cultural references, isn't it?
I remember you doing the Rainbow Connection.
Oh man. Yeah. I might resurrect that if we ever get to play concerts again. Yeah, I used to do it in Kermit's voice as well at the end of a really austere set with the with these sort of within the emotional spectrum of Diamanda Glass or whatever. I'd throw in a Muppets cover at the end and do it in Kermit's voice.
I was just going to say, it all sounded. This is my amateur, couple of Penceworth, right? I like the way it sounded, quite structured, and to the beat. But then it sounded like the instrument, the winding instrument, quite high pitched. It sounded like it was just doing its own thing. Yeah, I know it wasn't really, but that sounded a bit anarchistic, and I like the way that
I think
Merlin said something about the klezmer tradition that I think it was like in a funeral or in a wedding, you have to put a lilt of sorrow with the happiness, or vice versa. That if you're at a funeral, there has to be a lilt of joy, and if you're at a wedding and celebrating a life, there has to be a lilt of sorrow. So the klezmer's always got this kind of weird sound that's somewhere between joy and sorrow, which is
it's not unrealistically emotionally one-dimensional, I guess.
It just struck a deep chord with me. So I'm sure I have Jewish blood, but it's not been confirmed.
And what is that instrument? It's a what?
It's a clarinet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it did sound like it.
But it sounds very close to some of the instruments that they have in the Middle East. The
Shanai.
The ones with the kind of drone kind of thing going on. You can probably fill me in, Nick.
Well, it's a similar tone. So I think it's what is it? It's
what were the fluted ones that Burroughs sampled a lot? The kind of.
They were Shanais, I think. Yeah.
Very high pitched kind
but
of.
But it's more, but the tone is obviously cinema, but it's more to do with the scale that they're deploying, which I think is a melodic minor. Which
So
which
you
Claire
know
shares
these
with a
things.
lot
I
of
can feel it. I don't know what it is, but I feel it, and I go, "That's what I want."
Did you record all of that in the studio at once, or was it recorded in different layers, different times, and then put together?
So Ollie and I did the piano and the voice simultaneously because it speeds up, and so that would be, and also because we share a love of the great interpreters and imbuing it with a sense of real-time response, call and response sort of interaction. So, but that was that we were in sort of separate studio booths, so there was there was no bleed, so he could overdub the vocals if he wanted.
Yeah,
we did the piano and the voice
Did Forbes do
simultaneously.
bass to that one?
Sorry,
Did Forbes do bass to that
I
one?
don't think there's any bass on it.
Okay, because but for the other tracks, we were going with the natural rhythm.
Yeah.
Nick was the lead as far as the rhythm was concerned, and Forbes was very good at just kind of fitting in whether he was doing drum and bass or drum or bass.
So with the funeral dirge,
To our pacing.
yeah, with funeral dirge, we did the piano and vocal first. We did like 2 or 3 takes. Chose one. We didn't really have to comp it, which is where you chop it up. And shoot
It's normally the second one, isn't it?
Then we did, I think, a ton of percussion, which was stamping on the floor and clapping, largely to start with. And then I did a bunch of BVs. Then we assessed your vocal take. And once we were happy with that, I think that was all in one session. Then we did another session and we did the violin with Lizzie and the klezmer clarinet in.
Merlin came in. Were you there when Merlin came in?
Yeah.
I sent him the track beforehand, and he played on that and one track from the new album, Night Sweats and Fever Dreams, which is fairly low in the mix, but it still gives a bit of beautiful ambience to that. He just took for Screwed Love. He just took the reed out and cupped his hand.
Yeah.
Just made this sound like a dying bird. It was beautiful.
Caterwauling goose. Yeah. He knows as well. He's a frequent collaborator and a very good friend of my friend in Tel Aviv, he's a Russian kind of polymath. I think he's got a PhD in the history of Slavic culture, specializing in music. And we attended when I was on tour for 2 months in 2016. We attended a Jewish wedding.
Oh yeah.
Where he was in drag with his huge beard. I mean, he.
Wow.
And then we went and saw a show of his in Haifa in this tiny bar, which was absolutely incredible. And Merlin,
she's a great Yiddish singer, isn't she? Merlin's wife.
Yeah, Polina. Yeah.
Met them both. Once this thing's over, we'll have to have a jam.
I wanted to sort of ask about how Fever Dreams came about.
So I should probably lead with this one.
Yeah.
I have a lot. I died. I almost died 20 years ago this summer. I had AIDS-defining complications. I had TB, a pericardial effusion, pneumonia, infection of the heart. They took X-rays of my heart and they said it looks like your heart's getting bigger. The sac that surrounds the heart was being infected with fluid, and they had to put wires under my rib cage. I was conscious at the time, and syringe out all of this yellow fluid that. So I was really, really ill. And at the time, prior to that, I'd been suicidal and stuff. And the doctor came to me and said, you do know you're within your rights to turn down this medication. You don't have to do anything. And so for the first time, I was being offered the chance to die. And I realized for the first time I wanted to live. And as far as I knew, this was, summer of 2000, June the 9th. It was the day, June the 9th? No, sorry, it was August the 9th. 6 months from my birthday, the day that my niece was born, and my sister wasn't going to have kids until I was diagnosed HIV positive. So it was this kind of, I thought I'd never see the child and that she would kind of fill that void. And so I just thought, well, okay, I will take the medication, but if I live for a year, I'll write a book, because that was one thing I've been doing fine art before and visual art, but doing it through a university system really killed it for me. So I just wanted to approach art, writing as an art form. So I thought, give me 1 more year and I'll write a book, and then I'll die happily, feeling that I've achieved something. Because I had this sense, I was 22, and I had this sense, which I think people probably get in their 90s, of going, shit, I'm going to die now. And you look back on your life and go, what have I done to make this worthwhile? And then when I realized I was given another chance, even if it was a year, it was like, oh, well, then I must, I was so driven to write that book. So I wrote the book, had a book launch. In fact, it was taken up by running water publications. I went to one spoken word night, and the guy who ran it was like, I want to publish your book, which is just kind of weird. And he became the bassist in my band, The Flesh Happening. We had a launch in London, Hastings, where I come from, and Brighton. And at the Brighton launch, I formed my first band, but I couldn't sing properly. And my niece by that time was 2, and she sung Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, like that. And I thought, well, if I sing like a 2-year-old girl, that'll work with punk. So I went into music, and then I got a band together, got some songs together, and they were mostly about almost dying of AIDS. And then I was like, well, now I've done it. Now I'm ready to go. And then I was approaching 30 and having to see a psychologist because I hadn't died. But then, sorry, to cut forward, yeah, so in 2013, I got approached by a producer in Paris to do an album, which became Fag Machine, but he did all the music and I didn't have much control in it. And I didn't think I could do solo stuff because I never learned to play an instrument. But then I've been working with Mishkin Fitzgerald, and a couple of years ago, we worked on an album, Gaslight, Illuminations. And at the time I was talking to Nick a lot because I kind of got the sense that we could work together as well. And by the time I'd done Gaslight Illuminations, I said to Nick, I've got all of these ideas about the AIDS epidemic. Maybe that's a concept album, and sung a few of those to Nick, and Nick worked out the music. And yeah, sorry if that was too long an explanation. That's how we got there, really. And Nick's way of kind of taking the ideas and just completely visualizing the whole musical orchestration and just everything. It's just perfect. I don't know.
It was almost like, I was thinking about this when we were chattering away with Bradley in the preamble, that it was almost like being given a libretto and being asked to sort of co-build an opera around it. There
is a narrative there, and I was reluctant. The one that we really fused all of these ideas together on, I would say, was Destroyer of Worlds, and I'd written that one about a school shooter going in and killing everyone, and I was like, this won't work for this album. But as soon as I tried to think of an order and the kind of madness that builds as the songs progress, that song actually made sense. And your instrumentation for that, Nick, is just beyond.
That's one I'm especially proud of within that collaboration. I just think sonically and arrangement wise, and it's chilling, isn't it?
Yeah, I remember hearing the songs back, and when I'd figured out the order, and I was like, because with Gaslight Illuminations, it's devastating, but it's devastating in like the last quarter. This one like hits you with it just destroys you, and you're about a third of the way in, and already you're destroyed. But
no, it was Oppenheimer pronouncing, and then you get the bells from Slavovich, which was the evacuee town that they built outside of Pripyat when they abandoned it in the wake of the Chernobyl explosion.
And that was after Suzanne.
She'd gone out there, basically tour Chernobyl, take some photographs, make some field recordings. She sent us a field recording of these chimes, which ring to commemorate those lost in the Chernobyl disaster. And it's an incredible melody. It goes do 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 do, and I heard chords behind it immediately. And I was like, okay, well, we use that to set the tempo and to create the main melodic sort of refrain. And then we built almost the entire song around that.
Yeah, it was so weird because I found this kind of little folder. I rewrote some ideas. I came up with a new, with a fresh chorus for Just a Dream, but I was also using some old ideas. And one thing I found was some printouts. I've always lost my old hard drives, and it's just like, oh, it's fine, the computer's dead, start from scratch. But I'd printed some things out from a while ago, and one of those was this song which was rejected by my previous bands as being too dark or something, about
you don't get that with me,
basically. But it was quoting Oppenheimer, the Destroyer of Worlds. And as soon as because you had already touched on nuclear energy in
The Quiet Earth,
Candles, the second track.
Oh right, yeah.
Which became the second track, and then when I thought about that idea of the kind of metaphor of nuclear energy and contagion, and then the responsibility, and I mean it resonates a lot with the
invisible environmental threats. It's almost prescient, isn't it?
And you
I
brought
don't
in little radioactive glass, and we sampled that, and we put a Geiger counter on it. And,
Yeah, we took some nuclear fallout into the studio and recorded that. That was fun.
yeah. Really great.
Your sources from all over the place, and you're on the lookout for things you can use.
Yeah.
And bring into it, sort of thing. And
Totally, yeah. I guess it's a sort of an extension of sampling in a way, but I've always been interested in field recordings since I was reading about, sort of investigating William Burroughs and psychic TV and Genesis Peerage and all of that as a way to imbue it with the energies of the place that these recordings were made. And I've used on the Quiet Earth, the record I'm finally about to release with my band, the Academy of Sun, which comes out on June the 19th. It's littered with field recordings, some of which I made. I mean, for instance, a field recording, it ruminates upon a sort of nuclear energy and a lot of sort of environmental disasters over the last 100 years and seismic geopolitical shifts and stuff. And I actually went up to Highgate and had a individual guided tour around the cemetery and went and found Alexander Litvinenko's grave,
That was what
the murdered Russian spy. And I made a field recording of some birdsong at the side of his grave, which I put on my record. So it's kind of like a sort of running preoccupation in the way that I'll arrange stuff sonically. And it works for mine and yours preoccupations as well, Oli, given that I guess there's an element of theatre to what we do, in the sense that Scott Walker, who we both love, would say that the lyrics took primacy, and with the music it was about dressing the set, with the lyrics being in the set, and it was kind of like sort of building the sort of theatrical set around the lyrics and being in service to them primarily. As a libretto, I guess.
Since lockdown, I was determined to record the birds, the dawn chorus here. There used to be a forest at the bottom of the field, which my sister owns, but they cut down all the trees, and I went there, and it was pitiful that there wasn't any bird song. But since the road out the front where all the animals got run over on, there was no traffic at the beginning of the lockdown, and I happened to just wake up because a cat was trying to get in at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And I went out front, and there was the dawn chorus, and I was like, I just put record on my notes, and I put the phone on top of the car, and just recorded this beautiful sound, which is going on the next album, which is the one I'm doing with Mishkin, which is about nature. And it was like, you know, you can get any archive footage of bird song, but I wanted the birds that sing at my sister's place.
It's much better if they're individually gathered, you know. I mean,
and I think that stuff comes through somehow.
I even had on the Quiet Earth, I wasn't able to get to Iran myself. It was actually on the cards at one point. We did apply for funding to get to Iran and go and seek out Hassan E. Saba's palace in Alamut, his fortress, where he ran the Hashishim. That was unrealistic given the sort of current state of geopolitics. But a friend of mine who lives in Paris, he was headed out there. So I asked him as a kind of sort of surrogate to record him reciting some of the lyrics from the Quiet Earth as he stood on the walls of the Alamut fortress. And he did. And so we've got that embedded in the sonic texture of the Quiet Earth record as well.
Yeah, those layers of stuff that most people wouldn't even think of or maybe not even notice. I
was just going to say, the track that you played, it seemed to me like, I can't tell what it is that's going on, but I can feel there's like all these little influences, you know, in there. And maybe even, I was thinking, even it sounded, I don't know what I even mean by this, it's sort of electronic, something about your medium, the actual stuff, whatever you're using to record and to make the sound, you know. I'm going to say like Phil Spector's wall of sound, which isn't, you know, like that. The thing that you're recording the noises with, that you're saying, that's just as important as the noise itself, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, actually, with Funeral Dirge specifically, they're pretty much all analog sound sources, but the whole thing was recorded digitally, of course.
When you took on the bedroom, I mean, that was, you knew exactly what that track needed, and it was pure kind of electronic kind of dance house, disco kind of ultra gay 80s kind of vibe, but it just worked so brilliantly.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
tired of reaching out to a cold world which won't relate. But I can reinvent myself, and I can take you down, and I can reap my vengeance. I can turn this whole thing round. I'll be destroyer of worlds. I will drag you down with me. My fate is unfurled. Soon you'll see what I see. You will be my pawns, and I will own the game, and the whole world will know my face and my name. That love and understanding, there is only fear and hate, and I'm tired of reaching out to a cold world which won't relate. For human life is pain, there is no other way. There is nothing left to gain, and there is nothing more to say. I'll be destroyer of worlds, will drag you down with me. My fate is unfurled. Soon you'll see what I see. You will be my pawns, and I will own the game, and the whole world will know my face and my name, and my name will be death, and my vengeance untold. For my power is great, and my spirit is old. It loves to control and grasp my own fate, be havoc upon all those that I hate. I will take them all out, knock them down one by one, and I'll do it at night, I'll do it with guns. First I'll draw a deep breath, throw you swine a few pearls, then my name will be death, destroyer.
We originally were going to call it Feel Good Hit of the Summer. But
Yeah, I mean, that one wasn't, yeah, that one just kind of just, it was just so perfect, really, when you got that field recording with the bells. It was like, okay.
Well, what you get with field recordings, you get the sound of the air moving around it, around all of the structures that it's recording. That's why I much prefer to record in, well, for the film score that I've just completed for Bradley's film, the Exploding Appendix film, The Cake Tasting Society. I was ruminating on process and how to go about it, and the last thing I wanted to do was record it all in my room with MIDI and synthesizers and no air, just cables between synthesizers. And Bradley was very gracious when I said, "Can we rent a church?" And because I've played in St Mary's before and recorded in there before, and the acoustics they give are so enriching and beautiful.
It's a beautiful place too. That was where we were going to record.
Yeah, we will do. We'll do the video there. Yeah, and then the same is true here. I mean, inevitably there will always be some stuff that's programmed and has MIDI elements, etc. You know, and it's advantageous if used well, but you need air in recordings to give a sense of space and a sense of character and a sense of psychogeography. And that's why I think Destroyer of Worlds is really, really special, because it has tons of that.
But as far as subject, I mean, it was, I was putting the school shooter, I'm going to take my revenge on society narrative onto an AIDS album, which really doesn't like, but then I had the idea of kind of framing the whole thing as a fever dream, you know. It's kind of like, because when I was very ill, I had hallucinations. There were these blood tigers leaping over me from the blood bag. I saw Jesus in the wardrobe and all of these things. So I thought, if we can frame these songs as kind of hallucinations of someone who, the other thing I was reluctant to do was to re-stigmatize HIV. I mean, I've had an undetectable viral load for 17 years now, which means that there's no way I could even transmit the disease. But and to have a song like that, which is someone wantonly causing chaos or destroying people's lives in that narrative. I was slightly worried at first to even put that
But we
in.
discussed it, didn't we, at length?
We did.
To contextualise it. And to ensure that it wasn't in any way a trivialisation of what was being addressed on the record. And I think
Cave's not like a real serial killer, is he?
Yeah.
Is he? Maybe it's a double bluff.
Yeah. And I think that was when we allowed ourselves, if we're going to have one song that's awash with and enveloped in the blackest of blacks and all the darkness, let's do it in one thing, you know.
Well, Waste takes you there. Waste is Just a Dream is this kind of waking terror of the childhood night terrors, awaking to an adult reality that's actually a living nightmare. So then you come from that into Waste, which is the story of someone young and innocent becoming the person who fucked them over and fucked them up, and by that point their mind is so snapped that they descend into this I have become death mentality. So it's a narrative. I would hate to think that I would hate for people to think that I was stigmatizing any illness, to say that, you know, people are it's a story.
Yeah, but also, I mean, it was a destroyer of worlds, right?
Yeah.
Written from
do a similar thing today. There are people being wantonly irresponsible and not giving a fuck about the consequences.
It could also be a song written from AIDS' perspective as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah, can you write our press releases?
I'm just glad we're putting the Fraggles on as a bonus track, you know.
Yeah.
But I also think that, like with you, Nick, it's kind of like a lot of your stuff has been around trauma in Codex Novena, and also in a more global sense in the Quiet Earth project. Some parallel between what you're both doing in that respect.
Absolutely, there's enormous thematic overlap as well, and in terms of our shared influence as well, it's quite a ridiculous Venn diagram. Yeah, there's an interest in corrosion of landscapes, both bodily and geographical and topographical, etc. You know, there's also an interest and passion for extreme states of mind and inhabiting them as characters within our dramaturgy as writers.
I'm in complete agreement. In fact, there are a lot of themes that go into the next one I'm doing with Mishkin, Still Life, which I could have easily brought to you. It was just because I know Mishkin and Force had fallen out, so I wanted to give Mishkin the next kind of project. But what's so nice is that you and Mishkin have come together now.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just so easy to work with both of you, and I've never had that before. I mean, I spent 10 years, loved my band Pink Narcissus, but I spent 10 years pitching ideas to them and The Flesh Happening. They were like, oh, this isn't, oh, this, whatever. And I pitched the same ideas to you and Mishkin, and we turn them into songs just like that. It's
kind of breakthrough collaboration for me in terms of process as well, and that I've never sort of forfeited the lyrical responsibility to somebody else, and let them run with that, and I do all the, you know, supposed to create all sort of music around them, you know. And as I said, I do feel like I'm sort of Lloyd Webber to your Tim Rice. You know?
Even when you're in a band, you have more control than I have. You know, I know I've had to yield to the kind of overarching energy of Pink Narcissus, particularly.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd go, oh, how do I find my voice within this? Whereas I can sit down with you or Mishkin and sing something, and we'll meet in the middle. Just really beautiful.
Well, that's an insight into some of the way we went about writing these songs. I mean, they were heavily wine fueled for a start, but we'd meet up in the afternoons and we'd aim to create the skeletal form of sort of 2 to 3 songs per session, 2 or 3 times a week at one point, weren't we? You know,
and this album, and we hadn't separated. The covers were almost a way of triggering off ideas that could feed into the original.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's kind of like a sort of satellite record of
turned out 8 songs there were covers and 8 songs that were original, and they became separated into the Flowers for Foot and Night Threads. But they were done in parallel with one another.
Some of the lyrics within Oli's scrawled portfolio would have existing melodies, or they'd have like half a melody that could then be adapted fragments from different lyric sets that we would draw together if we felt that those had melodies. Ollie would sing and I would find the key. I'd be like, is that a comfortable key for you to sing? And he's like, so far, for instance. And then I'd start playing piano along to it, and that's I'd kind of improvise along with it. Then we'd refine it and finesse it and just set it back down until it was a relatively conventional song form. And then we'd be like, well, that's great. Now we can move on to arranging it. Let's do the next one.
And there was a certain interplay between the cover songs and the original songs. I'm thinking particularly the Brel Song of Old Lovers and Just a Dream. What's the pianist that Brel worked with?
It's called Gérard Jouanest, I think.
I heard that instantly, and it was like, this is how it should.
Well, it's all of those. It's those parallel octave motion in the right hand that Gérard Jouanest does that is so awesome. It's something Mike Garson does as well.
See, I know I could hear that in Mike Garson, but I wouldn't have known what it was. I just loved it, and you can do it. So that's just perfect.
The lyrics are important in this.
It's something we both care about enormously, and Ollie's unique in my experience. I did an interview recently for The Quiet Earth where I basically proposed that a lot of lyricists, in inverted commas, just see lyrics as conveniences. Sort of lowest common denominator conveniences upon which to hang melodies, and I just think that's a disgraceful aberration of the potential of words. And you've got a whole other dimension of theatricality there and expression too.
I could normally see in other supposed songwriters that you've plagiarized this and that, and you think that you're so out of the box because you've gone for something that doesn't fit into your genre or whatnot.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But if I'm not looking to real life, I'm looking to literature, and I'm looking to the way people speak, and
completely,
particularly human experience. But when I was 17, I met Selena Godden, who's she's taken me seriously as a writer, and I was doing poetry before music.
As was I.
Before music. And she was taking me seriously and pushing me out on the stage, and I'd be like hanging out with John Cooper Clarke and getting pissed and stuff when I was like in my early 20s. And
I'm just gonna go and phone Selena. I'll be back.
Selena, yeah. We did a little festival with Selena. It was a bit chaotic. They put us on last, and we ended up having to axe 3/4 of our set. But,
like a 3-day long sound check with no gig at the end.
And I'd broken 4 ribs beforehand by watching my album launch on virtual reality headset and forgetting I was on a really high bed and landing backwards on a concrete floor and breaking 4 ribs. And so I was on a lot of painkillers. It was, yeah.
And I fell in love with one of the panelists.
Oh, yeah. It was great, though. I mean, yeah. Selena's got this radio show, Roaring 20s Radio on Soho Radio, and she featured our Just a Dream as one of the songs, and it's great to be, instead of, being randomly, I put on lots of playlists on radio shows where there were 2 heavy metal songs about the Wizard of Oz in sequence. I was just like, what? And they went on for like 5 minutes each, but like when Selena puts us on, she really thinks about the order, and she really, it was a really nice. Oakley Flanagan is a poet who snogged me the year before Nick came, and I'm sure he'd snogged Nick, but he didn't make it that year. But he's really great.
We shall keep returning to Ashdown Forest until he does.
We're allowed out again.
Shall I play another track? Maybe start with we can do Just a Dream, and then we can come back to.
Go back to sleep. It's just a dream. Toothless, torn from mother's breast, and smashed against the cold concrete. It's just a dream. Go back to sleep. Go back to sleep. It's just a dream. That every mother said when racked and writhing in your bed and torn apart at every seam. Go back to sleep, it's just a dream. But your dreams don't offer you distraction. The horrors manifest within your mind. Adrift on a cold sea of strange abstraction. The torment and the terror intertwined. Go back to sleep, it's just a dream. I wake choked with a cotton breath. My mouth stuck shut with gum of flesh, and nothing remains as it seemed. Go back to sleep, it's just a dream. But my dreams don't offer me distraction. The horrors manifest within my mind. Adrift on a cold sea of strange abstraction. The torment and the terror intertwined. Go back to sleep, it's just a dream. My mouth was uttered by my bed. Cut with my fingernails, my head. She had healed my wounds and helped me keep my sanity. Back to sleep. Go back to sleep. Go back to sleep.
I can see that as a theme music for a film.
Right? It's end credits music, isn't it? It's
Well, not necessarily, no, but you know, something, yeah, very atmospheric. Yeah.
We should mention Lizzie Carey here, who recorded the strings on this record and on the covers record, actually. And I've been working with Lizzie for 10 years on and off. She's absolutely incredible. She did all the strings on this. That one has 12 Lizzie Careys multi-tracked, and she plays viola and violin. And I came up with that arrangement after we recorded the piano and the voice. I think we did that in one take as well, didn't we? And then you may have overdubbed it. But it was certainly a live take because, obviously, again, it slows down. We didn't want to have a click track because that would just sort of drain it of emotion, potentially. So we did that, and then I came with that string arrangement we had, and it was just a beautiful session, just in the live room, conducting Lizzie through 12 different takes of that part. And she switched to viola for the low end stuff. Just nailed it. It needed no editing. She's so good, you know, and really luminous. And also, little studio trick here is that if you want to create the sound of a sort of symphony string section with one player, you move them around so there are different positions related to the mic, relational to the mic. So you've got a different amount of air between them, and they're, you know, the reflections off the space is different and everything. Yeah.
What I liked was the quality of the piano. It sounded to me almost like it was just sort of could have almost been just in a big room, a big empty room. It was sort of echoing, almost just like without any interference, just somebody recording, maybe a performance, maybe even in a pub or something. But then the voice, the singing, wasn't like that. It was sort of through microphones or sort of. Yeah. And like the way the two, you know, worked together like that.
No, that's really insightful, and that's certainly something we were looking to present. Personally despise overproduced music within that genre anyway. There's genres of music where it should be overproduced, but not when you're working within a cousin of the chanson tradition. You know, you need to, I mean, the piano's it's a rotten old thing. It's absolutely, I love it. We call it old clunky. I mean, it's a Victorian piano. I mean, short of having brass candelabras that swing open as you start playing, it's, you know, it would be foolish to try and suppress.
Yeah, I mean, and you say about the space and forming the space space and your interest. And for me, I could sense the space. I could sense the piano over. I could feel a sort of shape. I don't think you get that very often, with music. It's very...
You don't, yeah. And you find also a lot of studio engineers, because they do it all the time and they're used to just like hustling bands through in a sort of rapid succession, they don't become lazy, but they become formulaic. And so they have a certain, almost like an algorithmic means of doing things that doesn't necessarily respond to the text that you're presenting them with. Where I come in is an absolute pain in the arse, probably. But no, when we were making our record, the Academy of Sons, The Quiet Earth, which is coming out, as I said, next month, I would, because I think because I self-produced for so many years, and I've always been arranging and everything, and I'm a multi-instrumentalist, I've developed a sort of fairly singular approach to sort of theatricality and how I'd like emotional peaks and troughs to manifest. And I think this is something that Oli and I share a resonance with as well. But it's not a very orthodox way of working necessarily in terms of, say, if somebody's mixing synths in, and I want them to get to the point, I mean, in the studio, I would frequently say to the engineer, don't stop until it sounds like it's burning, because if you're going to make a record that invokes irradiated landscapes, it better sound like scorched earth or you failed, and they would envelope it up a tiny bit. I was like, more, do it more, and they'd be so hesitant to, because they work in such a sort of narrow algorithmic field a lot of the time, immensely brilliant craftsmen, but they don't get challenged a lot. The same is true with the mastering process. And I'm generalizing here, but the same is true in the mastering process, where you tend to find now, as part of the so-called loudness war, it's simply a matter of compressing the shit out of everything until the waveform looks like the Barbican. The instruments can't breathe. And it's like what you were saying about the piano. We pretty much didn't do much to it. We compressed it slightly, added a tiny bit of digital reverb, but largely it's the sound in the room that you're hearing. And that's anathema to a lot of engineers, I think.
It was, and what for me, why I really noticed it was because the voice seemed to be a bit different. I don't know, the quality seemed different, seemed more electronic-y or something. It seemed in contrast to that. It made each of them very noticeable, stand out more.
Yeah. I guess it's about creating a space for each of the instruments where they can breathe on their own layers as a sort of like a sort of tapestry of textures in a sense, What are you doing?
I said loads of relevant stuff, but I muted myself while the song was on. So now I'm like going, oh, they're just talking over me. It's fine. And I was like, oh shit, I muted myself. It's fine.
That's the quietest you've ever been. That was.
So that's why I thought the bedroom would be an interesting one to do next, because when Nick was talking about how all of these songs and the songs in Flowers for Foot and Gaslight Illuminations, the ones I did with Mishkin, we didn't use a click track at all. They were very fluid. But when I pitched the idea of the bedroom, Nick was like, this has to be kind of like house music, kind of like 80s dance, and kind of AIDS, but the kind of stuff that was in defiance of the negativity that was put out against
euphoria in the face of tragedy. Yeah.
And Nick did these wonderful backing vocals. They were like a Russian kind of choir, ultra kind of masculine kind of And Lizzie again, Nick was conducting Lizzie, and I thought I was saying something about that at the time, but apparently I was on mute. Equally, Lizzie can be fluid and beautiful, but Nick got down these disco kind of violin lines, and Lizzie nailed them, and they're beautiful. Yeah.
Shall I play the bedroom? Would that be a
bedroom? Yeah. This is this one really shows how eclectic the album is.
Scented with a rectal mask.
That violin line at the end, that that was all recorded live. Nick conducted that, and Lizzie nailed it. It was a bit hard to start with. I mean,
well, the first night was towards the end of the session, and she'd already been playing like a maniac for hours.
We really got to squeeze her dry. Yeah.
That line's really fast, and it's kind of counterintuitive as well, and it's terrible for a violinist to finger.
We asked a lot of her. This is sure.
Yeah. And she loves. The thing is, she loves the challenge. I know this from working with her for over a decade. And sure enough, she went away that night. She'd scored it, went away, learned it, came back and blazed it in one go. It's just ridiculous.
It's phenomenal. I mean, that's pure disco to my mind. But the idea of having these chanson songs and these disco songs, and we've got one that sounds like Leonard Cohen, and we've got some Brechtian kind of stuff.
Well, they're all quite melodramatic genres, aren't they?
Yeah. I was just reading up on Sparks today. I mean, they're one of the few bands that I think have kind of covered that whole scope of weirdness and pulled it off for many decades.
I was getting Velvet Underground at the beginning as well.
Oh, cool.
Well, with that one.
Piano, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, very impressive.
Getting a bit of Montreal.
We didn't have real drums on that.
I was hearing a bit of Montreal in there.
Yeah, right. Awesome. Yeah. That's a good point, Iona, actually. The piano part is actually very John Cale with the do-do-do-do-do-do-do. It's actually kind of All Tomorrow's Parties. And yeah, I mean, I guess John Cale's a big influence on the way that I play piano when I'm doing the percussive stuff.
Yeah, I was sure that was disco, but I played it to some people and they go, that's not disco.
Yes, it is.
I think it is. I mean, it's got that house beat thing. We didn't use real drums.
Find me these people.
Dora Hayes, she's a fashion designer. She was like, "That's not disco."
I don't know. I think it lands very squarely within the lineage of sort of Erasure and Arthur Russell and stuff like that.
Well, that was a thing because with Gaslight Illuminations, I went for that very fluid thing of not having any programming or rigid drum patterns. But the album I'd done before with the producer in Paris, they never really worked with live drummers, and it was all programmed, and it was electro, and that album was called Fag Machine. So I think I probably said to you, can we kind of bridge the gap somehow, and have something that's so that it doesn't feel like Fag Machine was just an accident, something that can kind of bring fuse the two kind of styles together, or sorry, more than two, but
that's also something that I think we both A, enjoy doing, and B, has sort of unites our work together and separately, is this idea of sort of Trojan horsing in fairly extreme, upsetting, or sort of traumatic lyrics via pop forms.
Absolutely.
When you read me the lyrics to The Bedroom, I was like, this has to be a pop song. We have to make this as acceptable.
And basically it's a character whose bedroom, the room changes form. They're indulging in sexual experimentation, and then by the end of the song, their health is deteriorating, and they're being looked after in the same room, and it's gone from this kind of place of sexual experimentation to this kind of place of care and recuperation, and this idea of kind of waking, because I get these sex dreams still. I haven't had sex for half a year probably, but I still get these really vivid sex dreams, and you wake from them and I'm like, oh, I'm at my sister's in the country. But the idea of kind of waking from this really fevered erotic sex dream that you're being fucked in the ass or whatever, and you come to and you're in your hospital bed and you're dying of AIDS, that's the kind of...
Well, this is, I think, what led to us devising the album cover to be a hospital bed with a mirror ball suspended over it, revolving.
Yeah, I was kind of like brainstorming these things with Nick, and Nick was like, hospital bed, mirror ball, and then I pitched that to Ash, and
that sort of poppy thing with sort of difficult sort of dark lyrics. Like Lily Allen does that a little bit,
right?
Like West Country and Western. All her lyrics are a bit like that. And cut that Country and Western one she did. It's all quite rude lyrics, all that kind of. And then also Amy Winehouse was like that, wasn't it? Modern language. And
I'm surprised she got away with as much as she did in her lyrics. Actually, lines like kept his dick wet and stuff like that.
Yeah,
You know?
I would argue that Selena, my friend Selena, who I mentioned already, has a hand in all of this. She's friends with Lily Allen's dad. She is also friends with Pete Doherty. She's been quite public in London since the 90s, and she's an influence on me. I'm sure she's an influence on the rest of them. I'm not saying that people weren't saucy before her. I mean, you've got Mae West and all these people going back to the 30s, but Selena definitely has been like a catalyst of a lot of the kind of really kind of spoken word, the kind of stuff that, you know, doesn't hold back on.
Proposed as well. I think the Velvet Underground is something that we great reverence, you know, and Lou Reed was doing the same thing, really, you know. He was funneling really turgid stuff through those kind of rock and roll tropes, you know.
Oh, they're probably the most influential band on me personally. I can't remember. We went through some distributor with that album, and it was just a waste of time, really. They were fairly rude to me. I got CDs done up, and they said they were distributing. And when I got the CDs done up, I said, I've got the CDs now. You said you're distributing. They weren't interested. I got their name printed on the back of it. The State 51 Conspiracy. Don't go through those assholes. But anyway, if you want the CD, you can buy it through my Bandcamp. It's a nice CD with lots of pictures. And Nick and I sung The Drug, which was the first song we did together, is the bonus track.
Which was almost 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago this week that we did that, wasn't it?
Yeah. Or was it 2 years?
Yeah.
Was it 2 years?
I think so.
It wasn't 1 year. Vomiting. When I was vomiting, I had this stomach bug and we went into the studio and I was just projectile vomiting everywhere. Oh, sorry, that doesn't narrow it down much, does it? We recorded the songs in like one take, and then as soon as it was over, I was like...
Yeah, but you're a consummate professional. You would never vomit during a take.
No. I think I was possessed.
Those condenser mics are really expensive.
No, yeah. I just focus and do the take. We do want to release Night Sweats and Fever Dreams to CD, and that's the plan.
Yeah.
I put the plan to Ash, and I put 50 quid through for him to help on the artwork. Yeah. Because I only get money every other week, so.
It's also maybe worth pointing out that within the title there is kind of sort of a nod to that 70s disco era, isn't there? If you take
that was funny. Because
Night Sweats and Fever Dreams, it's got night fever.
When I said that to Nick was like, "What, Sweet Dreams and Night Fever?" And I was like, "Oh, this works actually." It works. I normally go, "Okay, these are the songs. I know I've got to come up with a name, and I'll sleep, and then I'll have and then I'll wake up and I'll go, this is what it should be, and I don't know why, and then I'll say it to you, and you'll go, and then I go, oh, that's where I got it from."
I'm your analyst.
That's like Illuminations, really. I mean, I had this bunch of songs about my ex who was manipulative, and I was kind of aware of the gaslighting thing, and then but I was also into like Kabbalah and the idea of light and dark and all this shit. So
and Rambo's Illuminations, of course.
Absolutely, yeah, you're absolutely right. That was one of the things that I kind of put there, and then as soon as the two words came together, it was like, oh,
yeah. You just know, don't you?
And same with Flowers for Foot, to be honest. I mean, it was a bunch of cover songs that really had nothing in common except for they were just cover songs. Is there a goblin at the window?
There's a gaggle of yobs bellowing, and I was like, oh, pandemic's over, brilliant.
So I had these cover songs, but one of them I ended up doing with Tris was My Pal Foot by the Shags, which I'd named my cat after, and then I was saying to Nick, oh, I want to turn the cat into a saint and canonize him. And you were saying Lizzie's mum paints.
Lizzie's mother's an icon painter, and so we had.
Her, she said a cat can't be a saint, so I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna have to start painting again." And
so we fired her.
Yeah,
you got to be able to turn the cat into a saint with the Church of Subgenius,
right?
Yeah, I love that shit. I love Church of Subgenius.
I'm sure they would allow a cat.
I don't think he's going to be...
Yeah, but he's a dead cat, but, a lot of dead people become saints. Yeah.
You can't be alive, can you?
Yeah, most saints aren't alive.
Little Richard, I'm putting that name out there. Send a memo.
You don't have to be dead. There was a few that were alive.
Oh, were there?
Most of them
were
dead.
Also, the ancient Egyptians canonized cats, didn't they? So screw her with a myopic Judeo-Christian vision of what can be a saint and what can't.
Fine, we got all the inspiration out of her daughter, and more than, it's like,
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
a picture from your mother. It's like she did. Lizzie just was awesome on
Yeah,
both
she's
albums.
incredible.
She said that she plays her son our version of In Dreams before he goes.
Oh yeah, she's done some incredible stuff on a solo record I've nearly finished as well. It's going to be 7 tracks and 6 are recorded. Well, it's essentially all recorded except for one violin line, which we didn't have time to do within the allotted sessions that we'd booked and I paid for. And then lockdown kicked in, so all I'm missing to complete this solo record is just, it would take 10 minutes to record.
You know how the strings for the Bowie cover, Quicksand, that was one of the last things we were like going, because I booked in another session because I really wanted to do In Dreams by Roy Orbison.
Yeah.
We've gotten all of the original songs out of the way, but I was like, can we get some strings on Quicksand? And we just winged it. It sounds beautiful. We're quite drunk now, blowing our own.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I haven't got any alcohol. That's my problem.
Oh no! You're in what region of France?
Oh, which part? La Nièvre. It's in Burgundy.
It's a wine region. Where's the wine?
Yeah.
Give us your glass, Iona. I'll pour you some.
That's
Yeah.
on the plate.
I'm going to take my leave now.
Uh-huh.
So go make something to eat, all that kind of thing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. It's been nice having you join us.
Yeah, lovely. Great to chat. You stay well.
Very interested. Good luck with it, both of you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care now. Bye.
Is Nick going out the window? What?
Yeah.
Don't jump, Nick. He's not that far from the ground, but I
Yeah.
think.
There is a moat though. I would fall quite a height.
Yeah,
We're getting old now. Falling that high is bad.
I remember reaching out and tapping your window with Wolfie.
Yeah,
Quite hard to tap your window. I was struggling.
it is
Yeah.
hard. Yeah, deliberately. Yeah.
Fairly long. I only just made it.
Ollie's like 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
We both are.
I had a very romantic Thai dinner with Oli because Nick was on a come down or something.
No, I was depressed. It sounds like there's an actual festival
All
going
this
on
bug
outside.
talk while we're on record.
I have
Yeah,
seen.
edit that out,
I think
Bradley.
it's pretty
Yeah,
public
we're gonna-
record by now for us three.
When I say come down, I mean something metaphorical relating to non-illegal things.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I've got CBD here, and that's fucking legal, motherfuckers.
So actually, I was going to ask you something about the AIDS epidemic itself, especially because we've got the coronavirus around at the moment. And one of the things that always sort of interests me specifically about that epidemic is it kind of links kind of queer politics on the one hand with issues around healthcare. And one of the quotes from like a documentary I quite like on ACT UP and stuff is like healthcare is a human right. So and some of the political issues around that.
Well, I was just talking to Adrian Goicolia, who was the director for our video for After the Flood, and he was saying that a lot of the protests that you're seeing now are just like the ACT Out protests, which he actually used in the video. This is a friend of Nick's and myself. He's the nephew of Quentin Crisp, and it just... it was just, I have this thing, if I see someone who's related to someone who I really love and respect on Facebook, I tend to I send them a message and go, I hope you don't mind, but I'm, a fan of your whosoever relative. I did this with Silky Longfellow Stanchel, the daughter of Vivian Stanchel from the Bonzo Dog Doodah band, but I did the same with Adrian, and because I saw that there was footage of him in Brighton, and I was like, I'd seen this video, it was like, my Uncle Quentin, ? And say, oh, it's Quentin Crisp's nephew. And say, oh, he's been to Brighton. And I messaged him and I said, you've been to Brighton. We should hook up next time you're here. And he said, I live in Brighton. He said, I was just listening to your music this morning and I wondered how I might approach you to ask if I could use some of your songs in my next documentary. And I was like, that's crazy. Turns out the guy who had made a documentary about me, was one of his students. He teaches at Sussex.
Well, Andy was.
Andy Wiseman,
Really?
yeah. Huh. And Andy Wiseman did this film, Positive, which was about me and AIDS and my dad mostly. Nick and I became friends with Adrian, and he directed the After the Flood video and managed to source this wonderful footage from ACT Out. And he was just saying to me, we did a little Skype chat the other day, 2 days ago, and he was like, all of these protests now, they're just, he said that he really sees that connection that resonates. The guy who provided the footage, it was a while before we could get clearance, and we were wondering how much we'd have to pay him. But as soon as he heard the song, he was really touched by it, and he said,
a poignant one.
"Have it," that made me cry. So, yeah.
Shall I play the video? It might work quite nice.
Sure.
After the flood, there was waste, there was mud, and the wreckage of all of us flailing, grasping for fragments of what we once had when we were young and life seemed plain sailing, grasping for dignity, grasping for hope, grasping for strength just to survive and cope. But it all washed away in the deluge that day. We're left high and dry in its wake. After the flood, we crawled out of the sludge like the first from primordial slime. We came to our feet, we soon learned to speak. Our wounds will be healed in due time. Walking onwards to freedom, onwards with pride, onwards in pain with the thorn in our side. But when all washed away in the deluge that day, we took about all we could take. After the flood, crawling out of the mud, we foraged to find a new start, patching the holes, making new of the old. We pushed till we plowed a new path, healing the wounded, the damage now done, building defenses till the next flood comes, and it's all washed away in the deluge again. We're left high and dry in its way.
And that was when I gave you coronavirus, right?
It was, yeah. Yeah.
I can't believe you got to be Kate Bush in the video. I wanted to be Kate Bush.
You can be Kate Bush next time. Yeah, I'd had lots of sleep then as well, hadn't I?
I was fucking ill. That was like that felt like the first day of winter. It was pretty grim.
It was actually Neil's fault that I'd had no sleep before coming to do that
video.
Oh,
it's your fault then.
We're coming together now.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
I remember coming up to the campus because I'd said to my niece Matilda, I said, "Can you lend me back the T-shirt I gave you, which was for the film Pride, Pits and Perverts, Lesbians and Gays Support the Miners." I said, "I need that T-shirt for music video," and she was like, she said, "I'm just going to Sussex Uni," which was where we shot it. I'll leave it with a friend. And there was this moment where, as we were going to shoot the video, it was like that scene from Back to the Future. It is the going, I was told to be here at this spot at this time, and
party
tuck shop or whatever, like with this T-shirt going, "You must be Oli Spleen."
Yes, I must be. And I had my standard all-purpose Pasolini T-shirt ready, of course. You know,
I was like, it has to be that T-shirt, and I had to get an AIDS ribbon, and there weren't any around, you know. But the guy at the at our favorite little pub gave me one. An AIDS ribbon.
That was good. That was a good shoot, and the video came together really quickly, didn't it?
Oh, it was so quick.
And Adrian and I shot the Rose Devoid of Form video in the studio as well up at the
no, that's beautiful. But have you finished that one yet?
Yeah. Finally, it's out. But I think it's gonna be premiered tomorrow.
Ah.
On What God Is in the TV. I'll send you guys a link. Yeah, that took me.
Working with Adrian, you and I and Adrian just kind of fire. We just it's like.
Well, I've just finished. Since I finished our film score, Bradley, Adrian as well.
We've got to all meet up, all of us.
Yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, IRL. He's been working. Well, a film for his students, which is a short sci-fi film where they can, I think, edit elements of it together themselves. He creates like a master edit, and then they can take it away like a sort of modular thing. Mine and Oli stuff, then my stuff, and then he'd helped out on the Rose Devoid of Form video, and I think as a sort of sort of favour. There is a festival going on outside. It's really disorientating. Bizarre.
You can't hear it, so.
You're lucky. Yes, and so Adrian asked if I would score his sci-fi film as well. So I created a sort of 15 minutes of cues and sort of crazy synth noises, incorporating the ANS synthesizer app based on the Russian photo-optic synthesizer that Tarkovsky and Coyle used, and finished that just yesterday. So I'm just hemorrhaging film scores right now.
I feel like Adrian's apologized for his great uncle Quentin's comments on the AIDS epidemic, and I was like, Quentin's awesome. I'm like, he's like, no, he said some bad things. And I was like, I kind of feel like he's like making it up to me on behalf of his great uncle. The whole AIDS epidemic embodied in one person or whatever. But anyway, it's cool. We're good friends.
Yeah, Adrian's awesome. He really is a wonderful addition to the extended family.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been very busy, Nick.
In as much as I have been hyper productive, and obviously some of that is just really being confined, Assange-like, to one room, which it is. I don't even have a desk. My filing cabinet is my desk. Quite ascetic and large, and uncomfortable in many ways. But I'm quite good at honing in with tunnel vision on just the sort of the creative immersion, and it's always been a means to just survive whatever's going on. Which is not to say that, I think as I put on Instagram the other day, it's like, for every sort of day of like manic productivity where I'll get shit tons done, there's then like frequently 2 days where I'm just sort of lying on the bed, apathetic, sullen, and staring at the ceiling, and it's just like, it's not easy, any of this. Having creative faculties is certainly helping, and I feel very, very lucky for that.
I definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
I'll have a day where I put like 2/3 of the day to 2 different projects.
Yeah.
Then like 2/3 to rest, like 1/3 to rest, and then the next day I'll be like, right, I'm on it. I'm going to do the same again, but I just won't. I just won't move, and I'll kind of. At first, I felt like I should punish myself for that. Like I was like slacking on those days, but I realize now that sometimes you just need to slip away, then go back at that energy again.
Yeah.
I used to think I was productive if I'd taken my medication. Like that was like, oh, I've taken my pills today. That's a good thing. Or I read a page of a book and took my pills.
I've had a couple of those days as well. Like I've seen my meds alarm go by, and then I'm like, nope, I'm gonna go take my meds, and I've taken that as a personal victory.
Yeah, no, but it is as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is in a sense.
If it feels like it is, it is. People attach so much significance to this notion that, and we know why they do so. It's to ensure that we do our pretend jobs for our pretend pay. In the less vital sectors. Look how in one vast sweep of a scythe, office culture has just been demolished. It's like, oh, actually, we don't need to go to offices anymore. We're even more productive now that we're not having our necks breathed down upon by some malignant narcissist in a blue collar.
She walked in on her dad having an office Zoom chat thing, and she said, like, there was clones of him. They all look the same. On the screen, it was like, she's like, I think they're cloning him.
One of my favorite memes of the lockdown has been the group of white people stood around the water cooler, and it just is labeled in the middle, oh God, I missed this.
What was that meme? Did you just send a meme about Karens or something?
I did. I have to show you these. It's amazing.
I have good friends who are Karens, and so I don't want to be mean. I love Karen Carpenter.
And I'll just send it to you.
Yeah, I love that one.
It's amazing. It's just it's so good. It's Karens with attitude. It's.
But poor Karen Carpenter. You can't just deny them their internal conflict.
Hey, I've got good friends who are Karen.
I came up with a whole verse. I replaced Eazy-E's verse with Karen stuff. Here I'm a Karen and I'm come for a refund.
I'll send it to you now. Okay.
I'm not going to indulge this because I know it's already upset some people. I think.
That's why it's worth indulging.
But I know a lot of lovely Karens.
Actually, well, the first Karen I ever met was when we lived in. There you go. You should all have it now. She came out with one of my favourite sentences, which was, "Tonight we drive backwards in the desert." She was absolutely wonderful.
Do we want to talk about the duet, Nick?
Yeah.
We haven't played that, have we?
We'll stick it on and then talk about it.
That was really Nick's song. I just wrote the choruses.
But it was developed as part of within the general schema and paradigm of the rest of the record, wasn't it?
And it literally, that thread that is played out in the second track, that nuclear narrative that is really crystallized and condensed in Destroyer of Worlds, I'm not even going to say, if I'd have tried to approach the album by myself, it would have been nothing. It would have been but when we put our heads together, it's like, there are so many layers to it.
Yeah.
I have you to thank for all of that.
Well, and mutually so to an equal.
Certainly the narrative resolving with After the Flood, after the two that I do with Tris, there were old songs, but Tris does beautiful versions of them. And that, but coming back to when we did, because Kamikaze was the first song I wrote about the AIDS epidemic, and I'd written my book Depravikaze, and which I actually have a copy of, only because I was nicking Selena's quote from the foreword. That song was like a condensing of the whole idea of now you're wired by your veins to a hospital bed, wasting away and gaunt with regret at the years misplaced and the youth misspent and all the people who made you in hate with yourself. That was a kind of condensing into a little punk song. But then when we put After the Flood after that, because the last lines of Kamikaze are, surely too soon for this to be the end, and it's not the end. After the flood. So it's this new, it's like you're staring down the barrel into death and then you come out the other side. But the really smooth narrative that we got with the first 5 or 6, 5 songs is just, it's, as you say, it's like, I don't want to say musical theatre because that sounds too jazz hands, but it's an opera of sorts. Jizz hands. But no, I have you to thank for all of that. It's just phenomenal.
But there is a narrative, isn't there? And actually thinking about it as well, when it does splinter into Kamikaze and the other track with Tris, it kind of makes sense at that point because the protagonist becomes so deranged that it would splinter into another consciousness.
Yes, it's almost like, and this is why it worked to have the shift from Waste to Destroyer of Worlds to Screwed Love, because it's like this character's become so fractured. And I just had conversations with a friend of mine from Hastings who was in a coma. I nursed her out of the coma. I nursed the knots out of her feet, and she was 8 minutes without oxygen to the brain. She was hit by a car and landed on her head. Right. And this was just after my HIV diagnosis. I went to visit her, and they thought I was her boyfriend, so they let me into the room, and I gave her a Ren toy from Ren and Stimpy, and she squished it, and we got rid of those knots. They said she'd never walk again. They said she'd never talk again. Yeah. She's talking a hell of a lot, and it's crazy shit. And for a while, I completely indulged it. She said she was part of a pedophile ring, that she was exploited, and that her mother was exploited, and that they'd been raped multiple times. And I was like going, shit, I'm going to take her seriously. And then she said about the times that they'd murdered her and the times they'd cut her head off and all of this stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, she's still got brain damage.
Yeah.
But that it's almost like Beckett. I listened to her talk, and I listened to her mother talk, and it reminds me of Beckett, this kind of train of thought and this kind of thing. And that's, these are real narratives, and people don't put that into song anymore.
I don't, and I have personal first-hand experience of that as well. And when my ex was in the very deepest throes of addiction, he would be psychotic with amphetamine excess and babble like Linda Blair in The Exorcist, and it was terrifying, but also fascinating. In retrospect, it was fascinating. At the time, terrifying.
She was saying it was the Masons, that there was this pedophile ring led by the Masons, and that she was a victim, and that she'd been murdered and raped multiple times, and that they cut her heads off.
It's strange how it always invokes secret societies that are out for malicious intent, doesn't it?
Well, I think there's some truth in it. There's a grain of truth in it. There is, any conspiracy is something that people don't speak publicly, and people do speak amongst themselves, and there are people of power who hold knowledge that isn't, and there are people who get away with shit. So
that's why they have power.
It's plausible, but then when you kind of give that plausibility to someone whose brain is so deranged that
they can grab the baton and run with it.
Because I realized she was naming people, she was implicating people, and I was believing it, and they were actually they hadn't done anything. And so that's where I have to take a step back and take it with a pinch of salt and go, okay, she's still mentally unwell, but I mean, it really set me off kilter, because that's why I went on the Little Richard rant with the punk for mental health thing, because she just put all of this stuff into my head, and I didn't know how to let it out other than to kind of go on a manic rant.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think that's why I've been ranting in some of my interviews recently. Is is a related position in that I've had a bunch of people sort of behave rather extremely during lockdown. And as ever, I tend to be somewhat of a loony magnet. And so they're projecting all of their strange lockdown-induced delusional borderline psychoses onto me via text message, fortunately, rather than in person. But it's felt rather aggressive and kind of...
Are they exes of yours?
One of them is, yeah. Another one is just a friend of mine in Paris who, has lost his sister during this, but is also prone to sort of swathes of mild lunacy anyway. So it's been kind of difficult. The thing is why I did a fairly angry interview the other day where I spent sort of 17 paragraphs slagging off the music industry, which I said we wouldn't mention, but yeah.
But when you were talking about your ex that inspired Roman Candles, or your parts for that song, and I thought, I completely been there, but I can't indulge that kind of person anymore. I don't have the psychic energy, and there is this thing with some people where you just feel like they're just draining you, and certainly when it comes to drugs, I mean, my ex was a meth addict, and it's like we were saying about our dear friend who was like going, "Oh no, you don't have to do any," and I was like, "No, I just don't want to be around."
I know, yeah.
And it's not that I don't love him as the person, like this.
It's not a sort of energy or an aesthetic or a paradigm you want to be around.
My own sense of security of
yeah.
And it gets to that point.
Nevertheless, I'm very happy that on our record I did contribute a lyric about barebacking angels in a nuclear reactor.
Just perfect. And that's why I wanted that song to come straight off the bedroom, because you're still kind of indulging in the sex act. The first two songs are they're still kind of raunchy in that sense, and then just the dream kind of cracks through, and then it becomes this nightmare, and almost this nightmare where you're still kind of sexually charged with waste. But it's become more of a nightmare, but you can't stop fucking. And then after waste, it's destroyer, and after destroyer, it's screwed love, and it's just this kind of...
It goes from inwards to outwards, it flips, doesn't it? So we should probably put the duet on, I guess.
Yeah, second song, Roman Candles, if that's cool.
Ripping the tides off my nuclear bride as we surf the deoxyribonucleotide, held together by gaffer tape, anvil and fire, barebacking angels in spirals of wire.
Though our hearts can't be denied, burdened with shame, striving for pride, with the lust too hard to handle, burning bright like Roman candles.
Oxygen thins to a paste or a dream. The sirens of drag kings with thick lipstick scenes. The reactor transmutes breath of God from a scream, pumping black bile and blood into neighboring streams.
Though our hearts can't be denied, burdened with shame, striving for pride. So we're just going through the motions, stripped of love and deep emotion. Striving for pride.
Yeah. Trust you to put dehydroxynucleoperoxide into a lyric.
I've got a history of doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
How was that written then? Was that?
It's Nick's song, really. I mean, Nick wrote all of the verses and all of the music and was very precise about knowing exactly where everything should go. I had this chorus which I'd written around. It wasn't necessarily a chorus, but it was our hearts can't be denied. Striving, burdened with shame, striving for pride, and it was about how pride is a more complex thing. I wrote it around one pride, about how pride is almost like in defiance of the shame that's put upon us. And and I guess, you know, Nick's lyrics are very much about a specific thing with a specific person. And if the second verse doesn't fit as much, because I talk about just going through the motions, which was just something about how with the drugs and stuff, and, you know, becoming jaded, and this is a theme. I'm not saying that it's something that gay people do necessarily, but it's something that does manifest, certainly in the drug culture, and certainly when sex is so readily available. It's a thing that comes up in the song Fag Machine I wrote. So
yeah, and also you and I have shared biographical experience of that as well, you know. So it wasn't much of a stretch to knit those two lyrics together, really.
No, actually, it was like I think with the day we were in the studio recording the song, I was like writing down the last of my chorus.
Yeah, but yeah, and I'm very, very happy. I'd like to do that one live at some point as well, with full band and the Mellotron samples.
We planned that for what became the Spleen launch. Initially, I thought that might be the launch for this album, but now I think we can
do a proper one. Yeah,
one.
Yeah. We'll have CDs to sell.
What's so nice about releasing this under lockdown is that we had it all ready to go, and also we did have a little launch together with Academy of Sun and Spleen, where we got to play together on a couple of songs, and it's just this song kind of echoes with the times. Sorry, the album just echoes with the times, and it's like we couldn't have planned that, but I think somehow maybe we're just...
Well, so yes, it's similar with The Quiet Earth, in a sense. 2.5 years ago I started writing... No, I guess 3 years ago I started writing it. It's been finished nearly a year, and it was conceived as a jukebox for the end of the world. And I'm not saying that we're anywhere near the end times in any conventionally collectively imagined sense, but there is there's a rather eschatological sort of ambience in the air. And in interviews I've had to kind of apologize for being somewhat prescient. It's like, I didn't wish for this to happen, okay? It's not my fault, leave me alone.
I would say there's a conscious thing, but you kind of feel like the ideas, because you might have like 50 different very loose ideas, but then some kind of like ripen and rise to the surface, and you kind of go, oh, this is the one that I have to do next. I mean,
and I think also, you know, human consciousness strives for patterns and order, doesn't it? And so I'll be writing a bunch of songs, and then as they ferment and sort of ripen, as you say, I'll start to recognize sort of superstructures that unite them.
Also,
and then that presents to me the theme of the record, and then it's more about sort of colouring in the blanks, really.
Well, I sometimes also wonder if I'm in tune with the kind of collective unconscious of humanity, like a hive mind like ants have, and maybe that's what other people see as God.
Well, I mean, that would make a lot of sense as well, given how much you and I, and probably all of us, adore the symbolist poets, you know, that we sort of tap into that Jungian energy of archetypes and stuff, and the unconscious.
I saw all of the archetypes when I was in hospital. They were most of my hallucinations, and I saw Jesus and I saw the Virgin Mary, but I was very reluctant to go, I must become a Christian now, because I'd read Jung and the archetypes and the collective unconscious, so I was able to kind of put it in perspective. But I could see how easy it is to fall to go, oh well, then it must be true, you know.
I think you're right. I think if you don't have any sort of like developed insight into the sort of symbolic register, then you just take it literally.
And the religions are aware of this symbolism, so when they kind of create their whatever you want to call it, then they tap into all of that stuff that we But I mean, I wrote about that in my book, De Papakazi. I mean, but that was a long time ago.
I must still read that.
But yeah, I mean, it's filthy as fuck. It starts with bulimic vomiting, ends with anal fisting, and there's AIDS in the middle. So it's a cavalcade of joy.
Well, a real club sandwich.
Sounds like, yeah, I should read it too.
I had to get it really. It was like a spot.
It's like Saturday night.
Yeah.
That needed to be squeezed.
I'm enjoying these new angles, Neil. Great.
What are you doing? What's your head turned into now?
That is his head turned into a hand.
I'm getting a lot of DMs at the moment. It's not registering which way up my camera's meant to be. I'm going to put it back that way. Hello.
Hello. I've had a lovely night. I don't know. Is there anything else we need to touch on?
Everything that I noted down that I wanted to talk about has kind of been covered. Is there anything else? I suppose we could talk about what you're doing next.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning the charity single that Nick and I have both worked on with Mishkin, and it's called The Western Pier. And Mishkin initially just gave me the first line, and I riffed on that, and then she rewrote it, and I was devastated because I really give a shit about my words. But it's fine now. We've given it up to the wider world, and Nick, are you the first voice and the last voice?
I think so, yeah. And I did a bunch of backing vocals as well, and the piano.
I put Nick and Mishkin together, and I'm like, I feel like a proud mother now. You've made some beautiful babies. I'm going to be a grandma.
Well, we're your joyous, chirruping offspring.
But you two were like my main collaborators, and I was like, this can't go wrong. I'll put those two together.
No, it was great. It was really, really good. And also, recording that meant that I was able to, under socially distanced precautions, of course, actually play a real piano for the first time in 6 weeks, which has been a hugely galling absence in my life. So I went to Michigan and recorded on her Yamaha, which was super special.
What's nice about that recording is it's kind of got a rock intro, but there's the kind of backward kind of drums or whatever it is, and then but the solo isn't a guitar solo. It's your kind of
three piano solos. I thought she was going to edit them, but she left them all in on top of each.
All in.
But it sounds good, so that's come out.
The reason why I've been working with pianists for the last 3 years is because, there's only so much you can do with the guitar.
I agree.
And we've kind of milked it for all it's worth, but, maybe there's more. I mean, with all the pedals and shit. The piano's great.
Yeah.
But all three of your that's because I was like going, this is all over the place, but in a kind of beautiful way. And then you've got Hannah's strings. She just put them all there.
You left them all in.
The thing for my vocals for the next album that I'm doing with her, I recorded 2 or 3 different vocals, and I thought she'd just take the good one, and she's just put them all in there. So I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I'm gonna yield to that because I don't ever like doing the same thing twice. So
sort of like a Dogma 95 approach to recording. Yeah, otherwise I'm working on The Quiet Earth finally comes out on June the 19th. I just loaded it to digital distribution today. I have a solo record, as I've said, called Font of Human Fractures, which will be done as soon as we get back in the studios and record the final Lizzie violin parts. That's all scored for 2 violins, piano and voice, and a few sort of minimal electronics. And that's the one that also features a song written from the perspective of Pasolini's car.
I love that one.
So that's nearly done. I've recorded an electronica EP whilst in lockdown, making the most of just the MIDI capabilities. That's kind of brutal, bonkers, queer, and draws on black metal and exotica equally in the midst of electronica. What else? I've written a film text that is related to the wider Quiet Earth project, and James Mackay is proving invaluable as a consultant on that, so that's quite exciting.
Are you getting to use Jarman's imagery?
Well, for the electronica EP, actually, I connected Graham Duff with James because Graham has written a chapter about the angelic conversation in a book that he's working on concerning 15 films that have been hugely impactful upon his life and art. And I connected him with James, and James was like, oh yes, I shot 40% of the angelic conversation myself. And I was like, oh wow, that's amazing. And he said, yeah, there would have been a lot more of my footage in it had Derek not kept fucking standing up in front of the camera while I was filming. Bless him. And then he sent me, he said that he actually did a bunch of still photography when they were filming the angelic conversation. And he sent them over to me, and they're beautiful. And I said to him, could I use one of these for the cover of the electronica EP? And he said yes, which is hugely humbling. So I've got a kind of exclusive Derek Jarman image for this electronica EP, which is why I'm minded to actually put out a very limited lathe cut 7-inch edition of about 10 pressings or something with that on it.
It was great to have an excuse to go to Dublin. First time ever I've been to Ireland, and you were exhibiting your music with Derek Jarman's.
Yeah, that was incredible. Absolutely incredible. Yeah. Other than that, this film text, actually, we're still recording. This can probably be public. It's fine if it ends up being so. I ended up pitching it to Robert Wyatt, who I'm a huge admirer of, with a mind to him potentially narrating it. It's a first-person narrative, but I kind of wanted to like imbue a sense of distance, because otherwise I would be, I'm going to be editing it and probably scoring it. So I wanted somebody else to do the voiceover. Also as a nod to sort of the way Chris Marker would deploy that distancing mechanism in things like Sans Soleil. So Robert actually sent back a huge paragraph saying that it probably wouldn't be right for him to narrate it because it's such the singular product of one person's vision, and but also received a bunch of really poetic prose, which has given me permission to use as a prologue to the film, which is kind of awesome. So,
he has a great voice, though.
I know.
Wasn't a fan of him as a singer, but now I'm really. I think sometimes those vocalists who you don't like become the ones that you really like.
There's no genre trappings to him. He has a really plaintive, unaffected voice.
Yeah.
And deliberately, I mean, I've read interviews with him where he stated he went out of his way to, like, much like Scott Walker did on the later stuff, just like, remove any sort of like soul cliche tropes or whatever, and just sort of go for the most unaffected means of vocal expression possible.
You want to talk?
No, I'll get this later. Hang on a minute.
So other than this charity single that we both worked on with Michigan, you can talk.
Hello. I think it was a fudge. Yeah.
Documentary with the guys who.
Hang on a minute. Hang on.
I've been working on a little documentary with the guys who would have shot our music video for Funeral Dirge, well, one of them, Jake, where he's been. Well, I've been sending him like daily vlogs of my life in the shed. And it's being released as a documentary called Living in Quarantine or something, in a shed or something. I don't know. But yeah, that's become a documentary. I've written some songs with, at least one with my band Spleen, and I've got some other ideas. What's that film called that Jake, it was about me living in a shed?
Sorry, say again. Sorry, we got Mark's turned up. Yeah.
Hello.
And hi.
Ollie.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going, man? Good to see you again.
I'm at 2 meters.
Yeah.
Jake, that guy from Stray Dog Pictures, who's doing, who they were the team that I was going to get you to meet with to do the video for Funeral Dirge. But the guy, Jake, he's doing this film about me living in a shed called At Risk, living with HIV.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I haven't worn that yet. Yeah.
That's the next big thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
From our charity single, which is already out, and everything else.
And the Rose of Wood Form video comes out on Friday as well, with a new track from The Quiet Earth, in which I talk about
the official release for Night Sweats and Fever Dreams is
June the 1st.
June the 1st, which is where it gets on Spotify and everything. I released it to Bandcamp in advance just so people would have a link, because I couldn't be fucked with those private links and shit.
Yeah, awful.
Yeah.
And Everything at Once Forever, which is the B-side to The Rose of Wood Form that comes out on Friday. It's another one of my choice lyrics where I talk about posthumously receiving a blowjob from Leonard Cohen in the Paris catacombs. So, yeah.
Oh.
Friday the 22nd of May, just...
It's Leonard George Janis in the catacombs of the Chelsea Hotel.
You know too much.
Just our minds kind of work together.
I know, it's brilliant. And also, Ollie and I must write another record. We must do that when this is over.
It's been beautiful, Nick. I will die happily.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. Yeah, and we should make more videos for them as well. I really think we should.
Yeah, that video would have been so fucking good. It's like a 2-minute song, and we could have got the best.
I know.
Hiring fucking Boston and a church, the most beautiful church in Brighton, and I was going to be, I had the ruffles and the tuxedo. I was going to be like Beetlejuice, but even more rotten and jumping out of a coffin, and it was going to be amazing. And then this shit happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the war began, and here we are today. That's a Brel, isn't it? I'm doing another Brel on the next album with Mishkin. I'm doing the war one, the one Le Colombe.
I think we should do Oli.
More songs of love. And I've also translated Ballar's L'Aigle Noir, which I can't sing because it's fucking impossible. It starts really low and it gets really high, and I'm like, why the fuck have I even decided to do this?
No, but you say that, but you took on Roy Orbison and you smashed it, so I think you'll be fine.
I like to think I smashed Roy Orbison.
Is there anything else we'd like to discuss now, or because I might go and entertain Mark? We're surprised.
I think we've covered everything.
It's been lovely.
It's been really great.
Thank you so much, both of you, for coming.
Thank you very much for having us. Yeah.
Even if we don't make this live, let's do this again. It's been lovely.
Yeah, that's good. Well, when Well, maybe not the next one.
Bye from Mark as well.
Good to see you all.
Bye, Mark. Let's
Yeah,
meet
Mark.
soon when this is over.
Stay well, all of you. Lots of
You
love.
too.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Much love. Mwah.
Great to see you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This has been the Exploding Appendix podcast. If you like this and you would like to hear more or get involved in our sessions, please visit www.explodingappendix.com or email me at explodingappendix@gmail.com. Exploding Appendix, ideas and culture with guts.
When my time to go is here, call my friends and gather near. Tell the doctor and the preacher that I'm failing, but forget about your black, 'cause I'm planning to come back. Play some honky-tonk and grief and Dixie wailing. Pick me up and lay me down. Spread the news all over town. And tell 'em to come or they'll be sorry. Pick me up and shake me twice. I'm coming back from paradise. This poor boy is here to live in glory. When they come to say goodbye, all my friends will sit and cry, and they'll watch the coffin rocking round and swearing. Then they'll raise a mighty shout when my bones come marching out, and I praise myself and preach the final sermon. Pick me up and lay me down, and spread the news all over town, and tell them all to come or they'll be sorry. Pick me up and shake me twice. I'm coming back from paradise. This poor boy's here to live in glory. When the earth begins to quake from the shaking of my wake, I'll be here and making music like a lifeline. Till the honking-tonking grief gives the angels sweet relief, 'cause they know that Dixie Wail is still surviving. Pick me up and lay me down, and spread the news all over town, and tell them to come or they'll be sorry. Pick me up and shake me twice. I'm coming back from paradise. This poor boy's here to live in glory. Pick me up and lay me down, and spread the news all over town, and tell them all to come or they'll be sorry. Pick me up and shake me twice. I'm coming back from paradise. This poor boy is here to live in